So, which came first? Your ability to read in a foreign language, or your strong grammar and vocab skills that help you actually understand what you're reading? Well, that's kind of a trick question, because it turns out that reading is actually one of the best ways to develop those language skills at the same time that you learn the language itself. The problem is that most language learners don't even try to read until they're more advanced, because it seems so daunting and boring to slog through all those gibberish word salads that just go right over your head. What you might be missing are 3 key tips that will make reading in a foreign language more accessible, enjoyable, and effective no matter what language you're learning. I'm Andrew with Brainscape, an adaptive study app built on decades of cognitive science research on how we acquire new knowledge as fast as humanly possible. And when it comes to learning languages, the science shows that the best strategy is a healthy interplay between vocab and grammar drills and using the language, whether that means listening, speaking, or yes, reading real-world text in that language. Even if you're a beginner, you can leverage the learning science principle of scaffolding by taking my first suggestion, which is to start with something easy. Ideally, start with something like children's book easy. Pick up a picture book made for toddlers. See if you can get the gist of what they're saying even without the translation to English or your native language. All you need is really a few days or weeks of beginner language drills in Brainscape or another app, and you should at least be able to make out the sentence structure and learn the rest of what they're saying from the context clues in the pictures. And if you can't, you can always look them up. If this ends up being too easy for you, then maybe you bump it up a notch to more advanced books, like books for 7-year-olds. The plots might still not be super compelling to you, but the feeling of starting to understand an actual written narrative in a foreign language is the thrill that you're looking for anyway. And you'll also be solidifying what you've learned in your language app or your classes. Whatever you're reading, just be sure not to dive into a full-length novel or newspaper too early, because that could be discouraging, or it might take you too long to have to constantly look up every word you see. Start with something really easy and then work your way up from there. Another thing I highly recommend is reading a book that you've already read in your native language. Whether we're talking about Dr. Seuss or Harry Potter, the fact that you at least know the gist of it, even if you didn't memorize all the individual words, will help you pick up the context clues and implicitly learn the new vocab and grammar constructions. For example, if you've already read Harry Potter, try reading it in Spanish. And extra points if you can read the book while following along listening to the audiobook with the same text, so that you're training your ear and your eye at the same time with that plot knowledge as your anchor. If you instead pick up a book you've never read before, then you risk getting lost in the whole story. The foreign language is right over your head, and it's otherwise difficult to get into the zone. Remember, the flip side of finding huge motivation in being able to read in a foreign language is getting frustrated by not understanding what you're reading. Which brings me to my last suggestion. When you're reading and you come across new words and phrases you don't know, make digital flashcards for them. Every word you find. Otherwise, all that time that you'd spent looking up the translations of words while you were reading would be a total waste when you end up forgetting the words a couple hours or days after you had originally read them. Popping all your new words into a flashcard app like Brainscape will help you keep a permanent record of your new vocab that you can study and repeat over time on any device using spaced repetition techniques that ensure you're always reviewing concepts in exactly the right intervals of time that optimize your study time for maximum retention. I hope that this advice has at least made the idea of reading in a foreign language a bit less intimidating. I know it might still feel like work at first, but if you start with small, familiar content and develop habits for filling in the gaps with a dictionary and flashcards, you'll be well on your way to being a reading beast in whatever language you want. Combined with those few minutes a day that you'll be studying those adaptive flashcards in Brainscape, these new habits should give you the tools that you need to rise to the challenge of learning any language.